When did your government learn that this link between the Indian government and this murder existed?
As the Prime Minister said a few moments ago, you referred to it, a few weeks ago, Canadian security agencies became aware of credible allegations of a potential link between the murder of Mr. Nijjar, a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil, and the government of India. Obviously, we followed up that intelligence information immediately. In fact, the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor traveled to India, I think, on 2 occasions. The director of CSIS went to India a couple of weeks ago to meet with his Indian counterpart. And as you know, the Prime Minister raised this directly with Prime Minister Modi. So once these allegations reached a level of credibility where the Canadian security agencies informed us, obviously we then ensured that they do everything that's necessary, not only to ensure the safety of Canadians and the Indo-Canadian community, but to hold to account the people that perpetrated this murder. The most important thing for us is the protection of Canadians, but that those who perpetrated this violent crime are brought before justice in Canada, and that's why the RCMP are continuing their investigation in British Columbia.
When you and the Prime Minister use the term credible, what does that mean in layman's terms? Why did it today rise to the bar where you felt it necessary to share with Canadians?
Well, a number of these allegations and this information was increasingly becoming public. Some of these allegations or some of this information was in the public domain. We thought it was important to be transparent with Canadians, to reassure them that the Canadian security services are doing everything that's essential to ensure the safety of Canadians, that we take, obviously, this kind of credible allegation extraordinarily seriously, that we have followed up directly with the Indian government at multiple levels, including the Prime Minister himself. But it's also important to recognize, as I said, that the RCMP in British Columbia are responsible for a homicide investigation. And the most important thing is that we allow them to do that important work, and those that perpetrated this crime be held accountable and be brought before Canadian justice.
Do you believe the Indian government perpetrated this crime?
Again, the Prime Minister was very precise in the use of his language. I think it behooves all of us to be very precise. There are credible allegations of a potential link between the government of India and the murder of a Canadian citizen. That's all that we can say at this point because, as I say, the most important thing for us is to ensure that Canadians are safe here in Canada, that members of the Indo-Canadian community will understandably be upset and concerned about their own safety. I spoke with the RCMP leadership this morning on that very issue, ensuring the safety of that community and of Canadians. And they also assured me that their investigation was ongoing. And we need to ensure that they're able to do their work.
And I certainly understand the need for precision, and that's why I'm asking you. Because the idea that the Prime Minister would stand up and tell Canadians that the Indian government is linked to the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is not a small deal, right?
But Vassy, what he said is that there's credible allegations of a potential link. That's what the Prime Minister said.
But why is it necessary to inform the public of that? You talked about there being other allegations. Yes, there was some reporting that there were, investigations commencing, but certainly nothing as concrete as what the Prime Minister and yourself are presenting today.
Of course. And as I said, this information was increasingly entering the public space. We thought it was important for Canadians to be reassured that the Government of Canada has been very much on top of this issue from the moment it came to our attention. At every level in the security apparatus of our government, we're following up on these allegations. We're raising them and dealing with the Indian counterparts of these security agencies with respect to this investigation. And the RCMP and their partners are also conducting a homicide investigation concerning the death of a Canadian citizen.
You mentioned the National Security Advisor, whom I know you would be in regular and close contact with, as well as I think you said the head of CSIS traveled to India.
Yes, in recent weeks.
Were their efforts there fruitful in any way?
Well, again, I wasn't in those meetings. They told me that they had very blunt and frank conversations with their Indian counterparts. We expect, as we said earlier today, the Indian authorities to collaborate with the investigation that's going on in Canada. Again, I'm not going to speak to the details of an active investigation, But it would be obviously appropriate for the government of Canada to say to the government of India that as this investigation proceeds, their collaboration is expected.
Can you tell us, though, based on what your knowledge is at this point, if India is cooperating or putting up a fight? And I'm asking you against the backdrop also of the relationship between our two countries, which does not seem to be very good right now, to be blunt.
You would understand if the Prime Minister was made aware of credible allegations about a potential link, it's not business as usual with the government of India. But I'm not going to speak to the details of what the RCMP and their security partners are doing in terms of investigating this homicide. I think the most important thing is for them to do their work, which they're doing. They're doing it in a robust way, and hopefully we can bring to justice the perpetrators of these crimes. Was
there any discussion or hesitation on the part of your government and the Prime Minister specifically about going to India, given this information?
This was a G20 summit that was held in India. The Prime Minister went to the G20 meeting, and at that meeting he had an opportunity to raise directly and very frankly with the Prime Minister of India the allegations that we were made aware of and express Canada's utmost condemnation of even the idea that the basic sovereignty of Canada could be violated by a foreign country, which would have
Is that what he said?
Devastating.
Is that what he said to Prime Minister Modi?
The Prime Minister has spoken about his conversation with Prime Minister Modi on this issue in the House of Commons.
He just said it was frank. I just asking on behalf of Canadians, what was the message delivered from the Prime Minister to Prime Minister Modi, and what was the response?
Well, again, I won't speak for the government of India, Vassy. What I will say is the Prime Minister said very clearly that we were in possession of these allegations, that we intended to defend Canadian sovereignty and Canadians, that obviously an allegation of this nature was extraordinarily serious and violates a basic principle of the rule of law in Canada, but also the sovereignty of Canada in terms of the ability to investigate and hold to account those that perpetrate crimes in Canada.
Is this why the trade mission was canceled?
People can read into all of these decisions what they will. It's obvious, and the Prime Minister said that, that when these allegations, these credible allegations were brought to our attention, the Government of Canada wanted in the strongest terms to impress upon our Indian counterparts that the very nature of these allegations is amongst the most serious possible in terms of the relationship between two countries.
Am I to interpret from that the trade mission was canceled, that the talks for a free trade deal were put to a stop because of these allegations, these credible allegations?
Again, you could ask my colleague Mary Ng about the particular details of
But Minister,
this trade.
you're speaking on behalf of the government. I'm simply asking for what exactly the government is doing in response to these credible allegations. That's it.
We'll do everything that's necessary to allow the Canadian investigation to run its course, to hold to account the people that perpetrated this violent crime against a Canadian citizen, and to tell and show the government of India in no uncertain terms that allegations as serious as these are obviously amongst the most basic violations of two countries' respect for the rule of law and the ability for Canada to exercise its own sovereignty on Canadian territory.
Does that leave open the possibility of ending diplomatic relations with India?
Again, we're not going to speculate on a whole series of these things today. What was important today was to tell Canadians that we were aware of these allegations, that we take them very seriously. The safety of Canadians and communities in Canada is the most important responsibility of our government. And the Prime Minister and the Foreign Affairs Minister can speak to the specifics of the relationship with the Government of India. The Foreign Affairs Minister confirmed that she expelled a very senior Indian diplomat from Ottawa earlier today.
Respectfully, though, Minister, I'm just asking what your government is prepared to do in light of these credible allegations you felt, the Prime Minister felt, were necessary to share with Canadians today. You've kicked out a diplomat, your NSA and your CSIS head have gone to India. Are you not prepared to go any further than the actions announced today, or does that depend on the outcome of the investigation or how the investigation proceeds?
But again, the investigation will run its course. It's handled by security officials as is appropriate. We stand ready to do what's necessary to ensure the safety of Canadians and the Indo-Canadian community, which will be understandably concern today. But we're not going to speculate on what will be the actions later this week or in 2 weeks or in 4 weeks. But the Indians know, because the Prime Minister made it very clear to Prime Minister Modi, that we take obviously this allegation of a violation of Canadian sovereignty and the potential involvement in the murder of a Canadian citizen extraordinarily seriously. And it will necessarily be a part of the relationship between Canada and India until this matter is resolved and until those that perpetrated this crime are held to account.
Minister, I'm going to leave our conversation there. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vassy. Nice to see you.